Like, just because we can't see God right? That we think, oh, God isn't there. And then all of a sudden, peekaboo. Oh, God is here. Well, God was there the whole time.
That is an amazing analogy. Wow.
Welcome to the second season of the Laughing.Mystics, an unorthodox journey through the liturgical year with Laura Lewis-Barr and Marci Mederi. Hello, listeners, and Easter joy to you all. So happy that you're with us. So, Laura, has the Easter Bunny brought a question for us?
Yes. I was like, oh no, did I forget? How do I experience resurrection in my life? I don't mess around with these.
Right to the heart of the matter, man.
Yeah.
How do I experience resurrection in my life? Laughter, right? Each time laughter comes, it's a small resurrection.
I think for me, it's been a long journey of, and this is the definition of individuation, I think, of learning who I am, who am I meant to be, and living the life that I am meant to live. And I don't know if for everyone it's as hard as it's been for me. I'm just not a person that has a conventional path. And so, but maybe none of us do. I can't answer that, but I think that's resurrection for me is finding that life that I'm called to is possible.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are there small moments that you experience resurrection during your day?
Well, resurrection implies to me a death before the resurrection, right? So for me, I can't see it as separate. So I think an example might be a creative project, because most creativity involves death. For me, the death of an old idea and a birth of a new idea. And there's often a lot of difficult feelings, anxiety, fear. And then the resurrection is finding that creative project through to its completion and the joy of that. Writing a poem a day, which is too hard.
Are you still writing a poem a day?
I'm not.
Okay.
But I'm not giving up. I'm just not doing it every day. I'm not
giving up. I'm just not doing it. I love that. Okay.
Well, I'm not taking down my site on Substack and going home in shame. I recognize that the act of writing a poem, maybe that is a sort of miniature, I don't know, it's hard to say it's a death, but it's a struggle. And then there is this feeling of real joy when I get to the end of a poem and went, oh my gosh, an hour ago this did not exist and now it does. And it says something to me and my soul. So any kind of creative act.
I think, too, that you said joy, and I think I said the word, too. Whenever I experience joy, somehow it connects to resurrection for me, especially when I don't think it's possible or it's hard. I like to do difficult jigsaw puzzles.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've got one on the table right now that I'm having a hard time getting into, where do I start? I've got the frame, but how do I break into it? And then, as you said, once it's complete, it's I can hear the music, or joy of whatever, of seeing that first bloom, around the corner of that daffodil coming up and opening, that's a joy too. So for me, those are all resurrection moments.
The flower blooming there's a joy because winter is such a struggle.
Acts of the Apostles. Peter proceeded to speak and said, "You know what has happened all over Judea, beginning in Galilee after the baptism that John preached, how God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the power of the Holy Spirit. And he went about doing good and healing all those oppressed by the devil, for God was with him. And we are witnesses of all that he did, both in the country of the Jews and in Jerusalem. They put him to death by hanging him on a tree. This man God raised on the third day and granted that he be visible, not to all people, but to us, the witnesses chosen by God in advance, who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead. He commissioned us to preach to the people and testify that he is the one appointed by God as the judge of the living and the dead. To him all the prophets bear witness that everyone who believes in him will receive forgiveness of sins through Jesus' name. Go, Peter. He's preaching it.
Well, the first thing I underlined was they put him to death by hanging him on a tree, which, if this is what they wrote, that's a pure mythic, it's a classic mythic image of God hanging from a tree, and it's the world tree, and we are in that realm of mythos. It's not literal. Jesus wasn't hung on a tree.
Right. Unless you want to be very literal that it was wood, But the hanging from a tree takes me to a different place. It takes me to lynchings.
Oh, wow.
Of all the people who were hung on trees and how that moment is connected with Jesus's death and crucifixion. And that so that's where I go with it. I like the mythos.
I mean, it's definitely found in other mythic stories and the world tree, and we're back to the tree in the Garden of Eden, and the tree as being a real archetypal symbol. So, and then the third day. So Peter is, but then we get to something that I think is very central, that he was visible to us, not to all people. We got to see the risen God, and isn't that the problem on a level? It's like this catch-22. You need faith in order to experience the resurrection, and it's hard to have faith if you haven't experienced the resurrection. So it's a strange, like, people who believe, well, it's a gift to believe, I guess, and that's what Peter is saying here. But people who don't believe, they're like, all right, show me a miracle. Come on, you got miracles. I want to see a miracle. That's a doubt. That's the doubter.
Right. And Jesus would not do a miracle if somebody posed it that way.
Sure.
I mean, that's what the Gospels say, at least.
Right. And that is, well, it's the same with anything that requires belief. You can't prove things that require belief. I don't know. I'm thinking of people who supposedly have skills that are paranormal, and they put them in a scientific booth and they can't do it. So what does it mean? What does it mean that the resurrection is not visible to everyone? It's only visible to those chosen in advance.
I really struggled with that piece of it myself, and granted that Jesus be visible not to all people but to us, which, is consistent from the other gospel, post-resurrection stories that we have, that Jesus did show up for some people, but not for everybody.
And I would say it's not about God or Jesus, it's about us.
Whether we have the disposition to see God?
Yeah, I think whether we're looking, whether we're open, I think, and then how do we define what we see? I don't like Peter's sort of it feels like he's already making the us versus them kind of world. We're the chosen, and that's a problem for me.
Right. I just think, is he, trying to tread water here? Why some people saw Jesus and some people didn't, and trying to create an explanation for that to try to. This feels like a created reason. This doesn't feel like a real reason.
What would the real reason sound like?
For me, today, the real reason would be, do I have the eyes to see and the ears to hear? Do I have the disposition to see Christ in my midst? Am I looking for Christ? There's an old video that you're supposed to count, and you watch this film and count how many times the guy passes a ball to whatever, and in the middle of the video, a man dressed in a gorilla costume runs out and runs away, and that nobody sees him.
It's so great. I can post that in the show notes. It's a really fun experiment about perception.
Yes, that we see what we expect to see.
Yeah.
So do I expect to see the risen Christ? And if not, then I probably won't.
Right. And again, I have to go back to, how do I define the risen Christ? What am I seeing? I'm not seeing some guy with long hair and sandals walking down the street. I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing the bravery of Jesse Jackson and a life well lived.
And I'm seeing that first daffodil. And I'm seeing the man standing outside Walgreens asking for food, asking for help. And I'm seeing the woman who's just an ordinary mother and she and her friend wanted to do some things in the area for hungry people. So they started these community fridges. And so there's just a random refrigerator and a pantry, and people can take out food at any time. I see Christ in that.
Yeah, exactly. That's really beautiful. Right. And there are a million of those happening around the world at any one time. And they may be Christian and they may not be, but it's all, as Teilhard would say, it's all moving toward love. And that love wins.
I hear Christ when there's an amazing singer and he or she, hits those high notes and their voice soars. Something in me resonates and moves and changes. I don't know. I experience Christ in that moment too.
Well, then I would say, according to what you just said, that every work of art.
Yes, because God's a part of creation. So any created art, if I have the eyes to see.
Well, I recently posted about a quote from Merton, and the quote is something like, the world is translucent to God coming through in every moment if we would just see it.
Wow.
And yes, I felt that wow. And I also, when I posted the quote, I said something like, in our world, that Merton, it wasn't like Merton lived in a fairy tale time. I mean, the war in Vietnam was going on. It was a really dark time. So that he said that during that time, I think he would say that now too. And how hard is it to believe, given what is happening in the world, that God is still pouring through all of it? And even, I think I've gotten to the point in my life where even things that seem really good or things that seem really bad, in retrospect, it can be the opposite. Like the villain of the story that I'm telling might do a terrible thing that turns out to be good in the end for the world. And
like Judas.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's the
Yes.
mystery of it all. Or I have a friend who's been talking to me lately a lot about Joseph and his brothers. And I love those stories of the brothers are plotting, and every time they do something, Joseph comes out of it with more. And he ends up, in the end, it all worked out. And so it's hard to judge anything because we're only in a moment.
I've heard that said, that any story is happy or sad by when it ends, like when you end the story.
Right, because until it ends, we don't know.
No, we don't. And
Yeah.
and sometimes even like the span of a person's life, and then they die, and we don't understand and appreciate the goodness that they did, that they planted during their life, and how that grew 2 generations later.
There's a famous, I think it's a Zen story where the neighbor comes over to the man and says, "Wow, I heard that your son fell off the horse." You remember this one? I remember your son fell off a horse, and I'm so sorry he broke his leg. So that's the tragedy. But then we find out that the draft was coming through, and the son didn't have to go to war, because we're surprised. That's what makes the story so delightful, is we're led to believe, oh, this is a good thing, and oh no, it turned out to be bad, and oh, this is a bad thing, oh no, it turned out to be good.
Yes.
Yeah, life is like that. The second reading is from Colossians. Sisters and brothers, if then you were raised with Christ, seek what is above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Think of what is above, not of what is on earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ your life appears, then you too will appear with him in glory.
Replace that word above with within.
Okay, think of what is within, not of what is on earth.
Got to find something different for earth. But if you were raised with Christ, seek what is within, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God.
I see.
Think about what is your inner life, and not material possessions. For if you have died, your life is interior with Christ in God. It works better for me.
But what do you think Paul means?
I mean, I think the writer is playing with that. Like, if you were raised, like if I raise something up, I lift it up. And that action, that above. But I find, and we've talked about this, the readings like this, if we just take it directly on the surface, create a dualism, which is problematic.
You're right.
Because then Christ isn't everywhere in all things. Christ is above, far away, with God.
Right. Not of what is on earth. Yeah, it's a very anti-earth message.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like in your head, then you're in your head. The dreamy part that I like is your life is hidden. If this were a dream and someone spoke this dream, I would say something is hidden and then it appears again. And that's the mystery at the heart of this reading.
I think of babies, playing peekaboo with them. And, they don't have object permanence yet. So you go behind the blanket and they don't know you're still there. Like, they think you're gone, and then you pull the blanket down, peekaboo, and oh, the joy. Oh, you really are there. And then you pull it up. Where'd they go? Right? I wonder if we don't have object permanence with God.
Say more.
Like just because we can't see God right, that we think, oh, God isn't there. And then all of a sudden,
Peekaboo.
Oh, oh, God is here. Well, God was there the whole time.
That is an amazing analogy. Wow. This idea of dying and being hidden, and that goes to me to the seed that goes underground. But when Christ your life appears, maybe that is that peekaboo moment. And as we talked about last week, it's in our lives, this is the constant refrain: death, resurrection, darkness being hidden, and then life reappearing.
So how do I see as God sees, right? How do I get that object permanence, that even though it looks or seems to be hidden, even though it looks or seems to be dead, how do I see that it's not, that it's just behind a blanket?
Well, when you first asked the question, I wanted to say, well, I don't think we get to see how God sees.
Fair.
But we can know that this is the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
We can know that God is behind the blanket now. Great image. I guess I just want to say that I think Paul is connecting being on earth he's connecting the above to dying, which doesn't quite make sense. Think of what is above, not of what is on earth, for you have died. So, and your life is hidden. And that is the being above. I don't know. That's a mess. It's a mess.
Right. Because I would think being on earth is that temporal situation, that life is temporary, as opposed to being above, where life is eternal.
And this Christ is seated at the right hand of God. We've got to specify it's the right hand, because maybe God on the left hand is a little like that left-handed God is less
shifty
God, the shifty side of God. He's on the good side of God. I just, why do we make that? Why do we emphasize that even in the creed? It's a dreamy image. It's like the light, not the dark side of God.
You know, that the right hand used to be. Thankfully, we're not there anymore, but that right hand used to be the good side.
Right.
And poor people who were left-handed were beaten into writing with their right hand.
The conscious side.
Yes.
It's almost like the ego of the people who are writing this cannot think of Christ on the left side, because that represents that mysterious part that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Let's stay on the right side, where it's more like ego focused. I get it. Christ is sort of what I want him to be.
And it's familiar.
I don't know. I'm going to just keep thinking about this, think of what is above, because it's a problem, and I want to sit with it because I don't want to just throw it out. Yeah, but it's a problem. I agree.
Well, we take it too literally.
Yeah, we have a sky god.
Exactly. A reading from the Gospel according to John. On the first day of the week, Mary of Magdala came to the tomb early in the morning, while it was still dark, and saw the stone removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and told them, "They have taken the Lord from the tomb, and we don't know where they put him."
So Peter and the other disciple went out and came to the tomb. They both ran, but the other disciple ran faster than Peter and arrived at the tomb first. He bent down and saw the burial clothes there, but did not go in. When Simon Peter arrived after him, he went into the tomb and saw the burial cloths there, and the cloth that had covered his head, not with the burial cloths, but rolled up in a separate place.
Then the other disciple also went in, the one who had arrived at the tomb first, and he saw and believed. For they did not yet understand the scripture that he had to rise from the dead. So much confusion.
Yeah.
Right? Mary is the first witness, but she doesn't understand. She thinks someone stole Jesus's body. And Peter, he doesn't get it either. He's just looking around like, what is going on? It is the other disciple who went in and saw. But the end of this reading is, for they did not yet understand. So lots of confusion.
And we talked about this last time, and I remember you said they didn't understand, but he believed. And that was the point, this belief without even understanding. Why do we have the awkward phrasing? Why can't we get the name of the other disciple? Why is it always the other disciple who Jesus loved?
And he's not named in the whole gospel. He's never named. So some people say maybe it was Lazarus. Some people say, oh no, it was John. Some people say, it was done purposely this way so I can put myself in there, so I can be that.
Right. And from a Jungian perspective, if I looked at this like a dream, it's the part that I don't know as well. It's that shadow part of me. It's the unconscious. It's the part that is less defined, and it takes the lead. And there's this doubling that for Jungians, Marie-Louise von Franz would say, whenever anything doubles in a dream, it means it's coming to consciousness. So there's like this coming to consciousness of what happened, maybe.
Well, or we can think of Simon Peter and the other disciple as like our two ways of understanding our logic and our intuition. That our intuition arrives first, steps back, and let logic go in first. The logic looks around, and then the intuition comes and has that moment of belief.
Sure, that's possible. Intuition or feeling or heart,
right,
or any of those. I'm also struck by the usefulness of these images like dreams. And, dreams are just fundamental, so I'm always going to bring them up. And I think they can teach me so much. But the idea of active imagination after I have a dream and using it for inner work. And so in this case, the active imagination is I'm at the edge of the tomb. That's where I am. And what happens next? And I could do this as an active imagination and see what is happening inside of me around these issues of the resurrection and doubt and belief and fear. I think it's a little scary to be on the edge of a tomb.
Well, tombs are dark. There's no electricity in a tomb. So, to walk into that dark cave place where there is death.
Right.
That is scary. We've talked about that not too long ago, about like going to that place that we feel there's death. We talked about this with Lazarus. How do we engage that? What are the parts of ourselves that have died, and how do we enter it?
And part of the active imagination of this story might be, where am I at in the story right now? Am I Mary? Am I Peter? Am I the other disciple? Am I the guard? Am I the stone? What part of the story is knocking at me right now?
Which is a part of Ignatius,
right?
Is putting yourself in the scripture story and asking, who do I identify with? So Ignatius and Jung.
Right. Same thing.
What I'm drawn to is that whole piece that when Peter went into the tomb and saw the burial clothes and the cloth that covered Jesus's head was not with the bearer cloths, but rolled up in a separate place. What do you think that's about?
Well, we talked about this last time, and you had a really good answer.
Did I? Help me remember. I don't remember.
Well, you said that this was probably a detail from the story told and retold and retold, and that people liked having that specific detail because the story is so joyous. They want to give every little detail of it. But I like that answer, and I think from a dreamy mythic place, I'm looking for something else. What's the difference between the cloth that's on the head? Is it the head or face?
That's covered the head.
Cloth that's on the head versus the rest of the body.
Maybe the community had this piece of cloth.
Yeah, I think you might have said that before, right? It was a sacred relic.
But to your question, like what is the difference between what covers my head and what covers my body?
Right. A kind of privileging of the head and the mind.
And the face.
Yeah, as opposed to the rest of the body. If it were a dream, I think that's where I'd be looking, is the separation between the head and the body. And, if it's a dream of the church, I might say, is this the beginning of the separation of the head from the body? Like, why separate the head from the body? And then we have the above and the earth. So we have this repetition of this dualism, as you were saying.
Well, and I think it is Corinthians that talks about Christ as the head.
Okay.
Of the body of Christ.
Okay.
So there is something special about that.
Right. But I think now we're recognizing that privileging the head can be privileging sort of that intellectual space instead of the heart, instead of the earth, instead of the feminine. It becomes this logos masculine focus.
Totally.
So
and lacks the integration. It's the separation as opposed to the integration.
I mean, if I were reading it as a dream, that's where I would probably go. And if I were reading it as a dream, there's this approach and avoidance of the tomb and these two movements of moving toward and hanging back and even running away. And I think that fits in terms of our experience of church, my experience of church, and my experience of Christianity in general. Like, I think for me, there can be definitely an approach and avoidance, a running away. And that's all in this.
I feel like I'm missing the Easter joy here. And I feel a little ripped off with this gospel on Easter Sunday. Like, come on, man, where's my Easter joy?
Right. There's no angel. There's no Jesus. There's no Jesus. Wow. There's no Jesus. Why?
That's crazy.
Why do we get that later and not now? We are at Easter and we have an empty tomb. And I guess we can go, it's still like the cliffhanger. Still like the season cliffhanger. I mean,
it is the season cliffhanger. Maybe it just takes God's giving all of us time to adjust, to sort it out. Maybe we need time to adjust and sort it out when resurrection happens.
Yeah, that some part of, like all the parts of us, like there's some part of me that believes even though I don't understand. And maybe that's where we're at right now. Like there's a part of me that runs away. There's a part of me that runs in. And there's a part of me that's, what is the word when you splice things?
Severed? But
discernment isn't the word I'm looking. Discriminating. I'm discriminating between what is above and what is below. What is of the head and what is of the body. Like like I'm working a theology out, which is what the church is doing.
Cool.
Yeah, I really, for me, this place of not knowing is a really good place
Mm-hmm.
because I think for me, a lot more can come through than I already know what the story means. Now I just have to force myself to believe it instead of it being alive.
Well, and then instead of just seeing and experiencing, as opposed to seeing only what I'm looking for.
Right.
Like if I know something too well, then that's all I see.
Right.
If I can sit in that mystery, so much more is open to me.
I agree.
All righty. So we're sitting in the mystery. Laura and I in this little sound booth, and you wherever you are. But we are wishing you much Easter joy, and that you might see and appreciate the resurrections in your life every day, throughout your day. And if you have a chance, please follow us if you haven't already. Share this podcast with someone and give us a like. Send us a comment. We love those comments.
And review 5 stars. We would love that.
Yeah, don't review us and give us 1 star. There's no Easter joy in that, man.
Until next time.